everyone, and today we are going through the writing section of the SAT. This section, along with the reading, accounts for half of your score, and so it is really important that you do well on this so that you get a satisfactory score. Now, in the writing section, there are a number of patterns, types of questions that you need to recognize and understand to do well. And now I will go through these types of questions in this passage, and I will illustrate how I think and arrive at the answer. First, we will read the passage. Humor is based on everyone's personal opinion, regardless of location, of age, of culture, of upbringing. Almost every human has developed a sense of humor based on social expectations and occurrences. Still, the human conscious may be driving comedic interpretations into lower orders of thought. What is humor, you may ask? The experiment begins with the separation of participants into groups based on age, gender, and social background. The participants were then exposed to 3 different categories of humor. Scientists in the USA have taken data from more than 1,000 participants regarding their opinion of what is considered funny. The 3 categories were ranked in order of sophistication, which refers to the construction of comedic intent in the sentence and how feasible it is to grasp the hidden meaning behind the sentence, numbering from 1 to 3. Results were measured based on the level of understanding and hilarity that each group gave to the material and then compared. Research show a normal level of understanding and comprehension in the first category, the easiest among all the participants regardless of grouping. With regard to age, grasping of more complex jokes increased with age. Regarding social background, comprehension seems to decrease in line with less affluent participants, but many factors such as social interactions and exposure to beforehand material could influence this insight and should be taken with caution. Males were reported as more open-minded, as they reported a higher hilarity score on novel comedy stemming from foreign cultures. Women, on the other hand, reported a higher understanding of high-level comedy compared to men. While the study of such a topic could be controversial, it is important to know the implications of comedy on the human brain. It provides an insight into the human mind. And so that is our passage. Now we are going to go to the questions. So number 1. Humor is based on everyone's personal opinion. Now there is nothing grammatically wrong, and the question asks us to change the word or replace this phrase based on everyone's personal opinion. Now we think there's nothing wrong, so it must be no change, right? But actually it's not. The SAT writing values conciseness, which means that if you can use a better word for it, essentially the same meaning, you should use it. So based on everyone's personal opinion. So personalized, it has personal, but it doesn't. Personalized means that it is tailored to someone, right? But not specifically based on everyone's personal opinion. It's just tailored to them. That could be correct. Objective. Now objective here has a number of meanings. It means your goal, but in this context, objective means regarded as by the public, as everyone regards the same thing. For example, math is objective because the rules apply for everyone. Now D, subjective, is actually the opposite of objective, which means that it is personal as opposed to objective's more public meaning. So now personalized versus subjective. Now these two words carry the same meaning mostly, but we don't say humor is personalized. We say humor is subjective. It is more logical to use subjective in this context, and so I arrive at D. So the answer is subjective. Now 2, regardless of location, of age, of culture, of upbringing. Now this is the second type of answer. It refers to these kind of weird repeats, like of location, of age, of culture, of upbringing, which sounds really weird, and obviously this is wrong. It's not actually concise. It confuses the reader, right? And so if we look down here, no change is wrong. Of location, age, culture, and upbringing sounds right. Of location, of age, culture, and upbringing sounds very weird because this is a fragment and this doesn't apply, right? Of location, age, culture, upbringing, that sounds correct, but if you compare, it is missing and. And if we look here, upbringing is the last item in the list, and as per convention, the last item should have and before it, and thus B is the correct answer. Now 3. Still, we need to read the sentences, right? So this, based on social expectations, the human conscious may be driving interpretations, the lower orders of thought. So now we need to consider. So still, is there anything that is similar in this sentence to this? Right? And you see that development has like no relation to the deterioration of comedic quality. And so still it's actually wrong. We feel that it is wrong. And if still is wrong, then as a result is wrong. Consequently is also wrong, and elimination leaves B, however. And if you want a more straightforward answer, you see that develop the sense of humor, so we think development as something going up. But here, driving comedic interpretations to lower orders of thought, lower, it is actually contrasting with development, and thus, however, is the correct linking word here. So the answer is B, however. What provides the best link to the next passage? Now, this requires you to, of course, read it carefully and understand the main idea. So this is the introduction, right? It says humor, what humor is, the development of humor, and what is happening with humor. And there seems to be an experiment or scientist in the second passage. So we see, what is humor? Then if this is correct, then the passage here must explain what humor is. But humor is only explained here, based on everyone's personal opinion. So this is actually wrong, obviously wrong. So what is there to replace? We see new research. This might be correct. Let's leave it there. Comedians are leading the front of a revolution of human psychology. This sounds very scientific, but comedians leading at the front of a revolution, they do not mention comedians, so C is wrong. Does comedy make us dumber? Now, this looks like it is very correct because still the human conscious may be driving comedic interpretations into lower orders of thought. Then that means we are getting dumber, right? And the experiments kind of actually something confirms it. But if we read more, it does not mention anything about intelligence at all. It's just hilarity scores and factors and such. And so this does not make any sense. And thus B is the only answer left, and thus is the correct answer. What is the purpose of the quotation marks? Here, funny. Now we need to read to add irony. to use it literally to emphasize the word or emphasize the subjectivity of humor. If we look at this doesn't really relate. Emphasis on the word. Now, if you take off the quotations, it doesn't make sense. Emphasize. Why don't they emphasize? Funny here. We need to view. How do I explain this? This is in context, right? This is a passage about humor, and so they are talking about humor already. So they do not need to emphasize funny, because funny relates to humor, and which is the main idea. So to emphasize the word is very unlikely, but it is not wrong yet. To add irony, that is obviously wrong and is irrelevant. To use a word literally, this is a scientific passage and metaphors are not here, so C is wrong. Or emphasize the subjectivity of humor. Now, D looks like the better choice because, as they said, humor is subjective, and so this sentence supports D, right? Humor is subjective. And funny. Funny has many meanings to anyone, so if we view it from a real life perspective, D is the best answer here. 6. Here, 3 categories were ranked in order of sophistication, which refers to this and that, numbering from 1 to 3. So we know that this is a ranking. So what do you think when you say about ranking? Yeah, it's order. So in order of sophistication sounds quite correct already, but we need to see along with. That implies that there's another metric, right, along with sophistication, but there is no other metric specified. We're ranked along, the 3 categories were ranked along with sophistication. With 1 to 3, there is not 1 sophistication, 2 sophistication, there is actually not. And so along with is wrong. Ranked by sophistication, sophistication is not a person, it cannot rank, so C is wrong. And ranked to sophistication is just plain wrong, and therefore A is correct. You need to think in terms of elimination, not finding the right answer, right? Because they will trick you into thinking like that. Where should sentence 3 be to improve the flow? So now we read. Experiment with separation. The participants were exposed to categories of humor. Scientists in the USA have taken data, and the 3 categories were ranked. So we see that the experiment, the participant, the scientist sounds very logical, right? But if you think about it, scientist conducts the experiment, and the participant, as in a way, they are in the observation of the scientist. And thus, if we refer to this question, right, new research may be the key. So what do you talk about when you talk about research? You talk about scientists first, and then the experiment. You do not put the experiment first. But that is our assumption, and we cannot rule out the other answers, right? So, what it currently is, not very likely, but not entirely wrong, because it still relates. Before sentence 1, which is exactly what I was referring to, sounds quite correct. Let's leave it there. After sentence 1. So now, the experiment begins. The scientists, the participants were exposed to 3 different categories. That actually sounds right. And after sentence 5 results, you do not simply put scientists behind the results. That is plain wrong. So there is it's quite a tricky question. I I need to explain this. So Scientist USA, more than 1,000 participants regarding their opinion, right? So you have a lot of participants and you just don't administer the humor immediately. You need to separate them. This is description of a research, and thus you need to go from the overview, which is 1,000 participants, and into the details, the separation, the participants. And so it actually makes sense to place 3 before 1 because it provides the best introduction into the paragraph. And so B. The writer wants to conclude passage so as to encourage further research. So we need to see. While study is controversial, it's important to know the implications of comedy on the human brain. It provides an insight into the human mind. This doesn't actually provoke any further research, doesn't it? So, no change is wrong. As marvelous as our understanding is, there is much to be uncovered. That sounds very good. We've achieved the pinnacle of scientific understanding of psychology. Pinnacle means there is actually nothing more to do. So this is actually wrong. The research was a full success. Well, yeah, congratulations, but this does not encourage further research. And so B is correct. How does the passage develop? Remember, this is a very common along with the main idea, which requires you to carefully read the whole passage and understand the ideas of each paragraph. And so we read. A misconception is called out and corrected. Humor is not a misconception, and there is no correction either, so A is wrong. An argument is put forth and justified. Now, still the human conscience may be becoming dumber. That is an argument, right? But they don't explain it. This is just what humor is. An experiment on humor and how people view comedy, yeah? And this does not relate to intelligence, so B is wrong. An experiment is described and discussed. Experiment here, described and discussed. C is very good. Let's see. A term is discussed and its meaning explained. A term, humor, is subjective. It's discussed here, but its meaning, I don't think this regards to the meaning of humor, and so D is wrong. We are left with C, which is obviously the right answer, but if you just gloss over it and say, yeah, C is correct, you may fall trap to harder questions that trick you, because if they word it differently, let's say an experiment is described and then contradicted, you're gonna see, oh, an experiment is described, and well, yeah, it is correct, but then contradicted, right? There's no contradiction. There's just, it is controversial. It's not contradict. It doesn't disagree, right? They're gonna trick you. You want to be vigilant and eliminate the wrong answers, so you get the best chance of success every time. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and I will see you soon.